Welcome to episode 38 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. In this week's main segment, I'm going to be interviewing the legendary filmmaker Brian TrenchardSmith. He's directed nearly 50 films over the years, including some real classics. He just recently directed his latest film called Drive Hard, starring John Cusack. So we really get into that project, how it came about, and just some general tips from a director's perspective for screenwriters. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking us on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread the word about the podcast. So thank you, everybody who has been doing that and leaving me some great notes and comments. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts and just look for episode 38. Also, if you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents and managers and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Again, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So just a few quick words about what I'm working on. The main thing I'm working on right now is a rewrite of a film noir script that I wrote more than 10 years ago now. I recently optioned it to a producer, and he's got some notes that I'm trying to implement. The notes are not all, I don't necessarily think that they're all that great, so we're kind of going back and forth on some of the specifics. But the main note he has, which I think is a good one, is he wants to make it more commercial. And film noir, while it usually has some sort of artistic clout, they typically don't do that well. And he's really looking at this as sort of a low-budget genre movie. So we're trying to make it, instead of sort of a film noir thriller, we're trying to make it more of like an action thriller, a low-budget action thriller. So that's what I've been working on, and I'll probably be working on that for the next several weeks. So now let's get into the main segment. Some really... as I mentioned earlier, I'm interviewing legendary film director Brian TrenchardSmith. He really does offer some great information about to screenwriters about what they can do to make their script better. So here is the interview. Welcome, Brian, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So to start out, I wonder if you can give us a quick recap of how you got started as a writer and director.
Well, I initially started as a news film cutter back in the days, 16 millimeter, news film, and getting it on the air by 6:30 with seconds to spare was always very exciting. And I moved from that to making promos for the station's upcoming attractions. This is at Channel 9, Sydney, Australia. I'm half British, half Australian, half Irish. And you can do that if you made 2 leprechaun pictures of that. So I, told the station manager that I thought the promos were kind of dull, and I could make them more interesting. And in those days, they used to say, well, give the lad a go. So I started to make some promos that emphasized sex and violence, and they seemed to draw an audience, and it was... they were quite successful. So, as a result, a rival network stole me, and I started making, promos for 4 stations instead of just 1. And that led to me going to England to work for an American company that made most of the trailers for European movies. And I ended up making trailers for Hammer Horrors. If you look at my Trailers from Hell output, you'll see one of my trailers, which I narrate, for the horror of Frankenstein. I made about 25 trailers for this particular company, including Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West trailer. And after a few years of that, the Australians called me and said, we'll fly you back if you'll run the network promotions again. And I said, well, only if you let me make programs. So that was my transition from the publicity promotion side of the business to production, a rather unconventional lateral move. And so I was given beauty quest shows to direct, small documentaries, and then I started devising television specials. And my first one was a dramatized documentary about Australians who won Victoria Cross, the highest award for gallantry in the Commonwealth Army in Vietnam. And so that got some attention. And then I went independent and started making my own TV specials. The first one was called The Stuntmen, which can actually be found on the Stunt Rock DVD that's based that Madman Australia sell. It's only available, really, I suppose, for people with multi-region DVDs. Anyway, that won an award, Best Documentary at the Sydney Film Festival, and now I had a calling card. So I continued to make, these TV specials, but I used the calling card when I went to Hong Kong with a script which was, eventually became The Man from Hong Kong. So I said, I managed to get Raymond Chow, Bruce Lee's producer, to offer to back half of it. Then I went to colleagues of mine in Australia and the Australian Film Development Corporation, that they just started to, back or put money into films, to get the other half. And, $500,000 later, we had a movie that was sold to 20th Century Fox in the US, and broke box office records at the London Pavilion and Piccadilly Circus in the UK. And I guess I was up and away from there. But one point of clarification. You were talking about these promos that you were making. When you say you were making these promos, are you writing, directing, and editing them? What exactly is that? Where you were getting the technical chops to be a director? Yes, to a degree. I mean, I had already, I'd edited news, and I often think that if you can edit news, you can edit anything. And I'd always been fascinated by trailers growing up as a kid, and so I wanted to have a go at it myself. So I would screen the movie, dupe off sections, cut them together, and then transfer them to Telecine, refine the editing slightly, have written the commentary track to top and tail it, and design title cards that would be superimposed or intercut. And so you can see there's a range of different technical experience there, which, in those days in Australia, we kind of taught ourselves. So I had the basics. And then once I was given the opportunity to make, television programs, non-drama programs, I soon sort of honed my skills at, what angles you should present certain things from. But my first true drama was The Man from Hong Kong, which was a kind of a James Bond chop-socky spoof, which came out in 1995. But a certain amount of my learning was on the job. But those were the basics. I transitioned from selecting scenes or shots from other people's films to actually designing my own shots. And then I tend to have a very strong input into the editing of my films and choice of music and the balance of the sound mix. But back in those days, the Australian film industry was just sort of the renaissance of the Australian film industry was just coming into being, and we kind of taught ourselves.
So let's talk about your most recent movie, Drive Hard, starring Thomas Jane and John Cusack. First, maybe you can tell us just sort of what was the genesis of that project? How did you find it? How did you get involved with it?
Well, I'd worked for the producer on a previous film with Cuba Gooding Jr. Called Absolute Deception, which actually is basically a Lifetime movie but made in Australia. I live in America, but I frequently go back to Australia to make films. And he offered me this action picture, which was a vehicle for Jean-Claude Van Damme. Then Jean-Claude Van Damme dropped out, and there was, we were told, a window of opportunity or availability of John Cusack, who was then going to go on to do a David Cronenberg movie. And if I could, rework the script for Australia, it's an American script, and retool it for, John's particular skills, and eliminate material that, he wasn't interested in doing, because, there's something of a difference between Jean-Claude Van Damme and John Cusack, though they do have, some similarity in the initials. But that's as far as it goes. So I, worked with John briefly at his house and came up with a script that was sort of more or less what he felt he could play, and then we cast Thomas Jane, and soon very quickly found the two of them had great comedic chemistry, and I pushed the script more towards comedy, but still had lots of action scenes. So as far as the writing discipline is concerned, this was a constantly evolving, script, because I encouraged them both to bring their experience and skills to improvisation. So, there are, a number of, there's, let's say a couple of scenes, where, there's a good deal of improv, and I like to give actors freedom to move, and to, perhaps, use their understanding of character to throw in some appropriate material. So, I don't know, I don't suppose you've seen the film, have you?
I did. I actually, they sent me a link, and I did. I just watched it a couple nights ago, so I have seen it.
You seem to have survived the experience. Anyway, that's good.
It was thoroughly entertaining film. Yeah,
it's a fun film. It's not Fast and Furious. It's a character-based action comedy. Where
I'm curious. You said you had to rewrite the script to accommodate John Cusack versus Jean-Claude Van Damme. I certainly understand that. Why did you rewrite it to fit into Australia? Was that purely a budgetary thing? They could shoot it much cheaper in Australia, get the same film?
Well, certainly the financing utilizing Australian tax breaks was the attraction for the producers there. But also, from a cultural standpoint, Australia is quite different from the U.S. In the original script, the two guys were heading for Canada. Well, Australia, you head for the nearest boat, I suppose, if you want to get off the island. So there, and the way the police worked, and so forth. But I took also. John wanted the villains to be, a corrupt banksters, in other words, and that allowed him to, get a little bit of his personal political philosophy into the film, which you may have noticed briefly in before Granny comes up and starts shooting at them. He talks a little bit about how he gained his rig. So there was a lot of changes to be made, and originally the villains were kind of Bondish type villains, Blofeld-esque, strangling people in their boardroom for not delivering the goods, things like that. I think it was better to make, albeit in a wry, offbeat comedy, to make the villains have some basis in reality, such as being banksters. So that was, and also I had to tailor the action for what we could do, because one of the restrictions on the film was that I couldn't actually damage any of the vehicles.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm curious. I'm curious, a director, you've done so many movies. What attracts you to a film like this? I'm curious how something like that, you must get a lot of scripts come across your desk, and why do you select the ones that you select?
Well, it's very simple. I select the ones that are funded. I've never made a green light I didn't like. Yeah, sure, I have a couple of dream projects that I would like to do. I've written a revisionist Richard III, but the true story of Richard III, who did not murder the princess in the tower, did not poison his wife to marry his niece, did not do a whole lot of things that Shakespeare made very entertaining as a dutiful, propagandist for the Tudor regime. So, if someone would just give me $15 million, I would make a terrific film out of that. But I've experienced some difficulty in getting the necessary enthusiasm because most funding bodies say, well, bad Richard is more fun than good Richard. But good Richard actually happens to be closer to the historic truth. So, I have 5 projects currently chasing money that I am attached to as director, and in one case, executive producer. And I say, well, may the best man win. I will make any film that is funded, provided I can then adjust the script to my sensibility, or completely rewrite it, as may be the case in one upcoming instance. But hey, if they get the money just based on the poster and the concept, I will certainly provide the script, or let's say make the script better than it currently is. I do need to mold the material in some way to make it my own for me to believe in it. But I'll take on anything with the possible exception of Human Centipede 4. I think I might give that a miss. No one offered me that. But I just wanted to. There are let's say there are levels beneath which I will not swim. So let's talk about getting major stars in an independent film like this. How did you get John Cusack attached? Well, he had a window of availability. We could meet his price. He just wanted the scripts to be, smarter and suit his particular screen persona. And if we could do that in the narrow window of time, then we would. We spent about 3 weeks getting the script to his satisfaction, and also then incorporating a bit of Thomas Jane's input in the last week when he came on board. And then I flew off to Australia, and 3 weeks later I prepped the movie, and they flew in, and we got John Cusack out, basically 4 days before his window closed. And he went off and did the Cronenberg picture, which I look forward to seeing. Yeah. I wonder if you can give us some tips. As I said, this is a screenwriting podcast. I wonder if you can give screenwriters some tips kind of from the director's perspective. Are there some things that directors love to see in a script? Maybe there's some practical tips that someone as seasoned as yourself, they're second nature to you, but you see that screenwriters don't necessarily understand them. I'd be curious just to hear kind of your thoughts on scripts from someone who's directed a lot of movies. Well, I think one thing to avoid is start giving the director camera angles. Let him, find the locations and how best to exploit them visually. I think, obviously, some visual notes sometimes are helpful in terms of setting a scene, but do it as concisely as possible. Concisely, evocatively. And put some kind of general picture of the locale, the location, that therefore is helpful to understand the scene that follows, and then get on with it. Think in terms of moving the story along, as fast as possible. Everyone seems to have a very short attention span these days. Depends what market you're writing for. But try and also, write characters that
stars will want to play. That is the key. You know, you want a film finance, it's got to have a star. If you want a star, he's got to have a role that he wants to play, and dialogue that he wants to say. So just make sure that as you're constructing the characters, you give them meat that a star would want to get his teeth into. So that's that's another thing. But just try to write as tersely and concisely as possible so that it's a fast read. And because first, before the star reads it, the agent or manager will read it. And tons of scripts cross these people's desks. If it doesn't take their interest within 10 pages, they're going to toss it in the bin or hit delete these days. So that's, and finally, really, writing is rewriting. When you feel very proud of yourself for having got to the end of the first draft, by all means show it to a friend or a colleague, but don't think, okay, I've written the script, I'm sending it out.
How can people watch Drive Hard? What's the best way for them to get it?
Well, they can, Drive Hard started on VOD yesterday, so
okay.
On demand, and will continue throughout this month. And then on October the 4th, it will be in a number of theaters across America and also on iTunes. So they have a choice of venues. We want to see the beautiful Queensland, Gold Coast locations and fast cars screening around them. Then the big screen will be quite a good place to see it. I've actually seen it projected at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, whose theater we hired for an audience preview. It looks quite good on the big screen.
Perfect.
But it also looks good on 60-inch screen, too.
Perfect. I found BMX Bandits, which was actually as Nicole Kidman's first movie. I found that on Netflix and was watching it last night. I wonder, when is something like The Man from Hong Kong going to be on Netflix?
I don't know. I don't control the rights, so I own half the rights.
Sure.
But Rupert Murdoch owns the other half, and you know what that could be like.
Yeah.
So, yes, I don't think he shared toys. That's kindergarten somehow. Anyway, the best way to see The Man from Hong Kong is to buy the DVD from Madman, Australia. And similarly, with BMX Bandits, it's been released on Blu-ray here. BMX Bandits on Blu-ray and looks, frankly, even better than it did when I saw it, on its theatrical release. It looks really good. There are a few of mine that you can find. Siege of Firebase Gloria is now on DVD. So Night of the Demons 2 is on Blu-ray. And my Leprechaun movies will be released at the end of the month on Blu-ray.
Okay, perfect. What's the best way for people to keep in contact with you? Do you blog or are you on Twitter?
Well, Trailers from Hell is a cinema history site run by Joe Dante, the director of Gremlins. John Landis makes many contributions. There are a lot of well-known directors who basically introduce a film they like on camera and then narrate over the trailer with some facts about how it was made and so forth. So there is a way to reply to those. And I think there's a blog of mine about Drive Hard has just appeared on the trailersfromhell.com website.
Perfect. And I'll link to that. I will put a link to that in the show notes so people can find that and click directly over. Brian, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate this. This has been a very informative interview. It was great talking with you.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I could go on talking for hours, but I think I now have to drive to that rather large hole in the ground in Arizona. I'm told it's quite spectacular. So I look forward to seeing that. Anyway, thank you.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Just a quick update on the class that I'm going to be teaching this Saturday, September 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The class is called Choosing a Marketable Concept for Your Screenplay. It's the first class in a one-year series that I'm going to be running and covering the entire screenwriting process, from choosing a concept to actually writing the script and then to actually marketing the screenplay. There are still 2 spots left as I'm recording this, which is actually a week early than it gets published, but there's still 2 spots left for the 1-year intensive screenwriting workshop that I'll be running. This class is the first part of that. If you want to just take this class, that's totally fine. There's definitely some more spots if you want to just take this one class. Again, that class is going to be on Saturday, September 27th. If you're listening to this after the class takes place, no problem. I record the classes. I put them in the Selling Your Screenplay Select library so you can catch up on those and hopefully take some of the other classes that I will be offering throughout the next year. If you want to learn more about this, please go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/classes. Again, that's Saturday, September 27th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And again, this class is the first part of the Selling Your Screenplay Select Gold 1-year intensive screenwriting workshop that I'm running, where I really will be helping screenwriters through the entire process of writing, developing a script, writing a script, and then ultimately marketing and hopefully selling that script. So check that out if you would like to learn more. That's sellingyourscreenplay.com/gold. In the next episode of Selling Your Screenplay podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Melanie Oram. She is the head of the screenwriting department at the New York Film Academy, as well as being an accomplished writer and producer. We'll be talking a bit about short films and how screenwriters can start to build a nice career by writing shorts. She's got a lot of practical information for screenwriters who are doing shorts. She helps all of her students through the production of their shorts, so she really knows a lot about how to write a good short and then how to actually get it to festivals and that kind of thing. So if you're looking to write and potentially produce a short, definitely check out next week's episode. I wanted to mix things up a little bit and just have a quick screenwriting lesson. On HBO, they're starting to get some of the Oscar-winning films from last year. 12 Years a Slave, I just watched that on HBO Go, and last night I just watched Dallas Buyers Club. I mean, there's a lot of great screenwriting lessons that you can learn from both of these movies, but I just wanted to touch on one thing that really impressed me about Dallas Buyers Club. And the screenwriting, again, there's a ton of lessons that you can learn, but the one thing that really stuck out to me is the actual concept is really, really rock solid. All the things that a good screenplay needs, you can see in the concept. And specifically what I'm talking about is, you have a life and death situation. You got big drama. This guy is literally going to die in 30 days. You have a really developed, interesting character. And that character arc, the actual change of the character, is really what the story is about. I mean, there is the logistics of the story of this guy creating it's a Dallas Buyers Club for the AIDS medication, if you haven't seen the film. There's definitely that's like part of the story, but the thing that moves the story forward is this guy's transformation and this guy's character arc. And I can tell you when I'm coming up with ideas and I'm coming up with log lines, it's not always that clear. Like, I can see in just the concept, if someone pitched this story to me, it would be really clear to me that this is a really solid idea for a screenplay, because you have a really gut-wrenching story that you're going to be able to get a lot of drama out of, and you have a very clear character arc for this character. And it would have been easy for the writers to make this guy like a really nice guy from the beginning, so his doesn't have an arc. But they really, the concept and the way they conceived of this really, really made this script work. So anyways, just a quick screenwriting lesson. I thought it might be interesting just to talk about that for a minute. If you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend it. It's a really good film too, just on so many different levels. It works. All the stuff I just said, the concept, it's very, very heartwarming. It's got some real good dramatic beats, some great scenes, and obviously, great acting. Matthew McConaughey winning the Oscar for Best Actor. So definitely check it out. As I said, as I'm recording this, it's on HBO Go now. So have a look if you have HBO. I'm sure it'll end up on Netflix eventually. But if you want to check it out, check out HBO Go. Anyways, that's our show. Thank you for listening.